Hi, and welcome to the virtual Open Day student question and answer session for molecular and cellular biochemistry at the University of Oxford. My name is Maike Bublitz, and I'm an associate professor and tutor in biochemistry here at Oxford. So we have collated a number of questions that our students are often asked on the Open Day. And the first one is a very popular one, and it is, what is the difference between biomedical sciences and biochemistry? So now that you have been studying biochemistry for a while already, how would you answer this question? Alessandra.
Hi, I'm Alessandra. I'm a current third year. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I remember when I was kind of looking at universities and filling out my UCAS forms, I was pretty confused about it, and I knew that, a lot of my friends were looking at either medicine or biomedical sciences as their fifth option, and then there I was kind of at the boundary, not quite sure what biochemistry even was, because you don't get taught it at school really. And when you have a look at university prospectuses, a lot of them will say it's kind of the intersection of chemistry and biology. And I think what really helped me understand, and what I would say is the main kind of difference, is it is really looking at, as the course sort of says in the title, the molecular and cellular stuff. So it is really looking at, if you drill deep down. And the other difference I'd say from friends who study biomedical sciences is that we do quite a lot of plant metabolism. We do quite a lot of looking at bacteria, looking at immune systems and developmental biology in all kinds of different organisms, and really have a much broader spectrum than just humans.
Hi, I'm Claire and I'm a third year. The reason I chose biochemistry was because it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of what's happening and what's causing these cellular functions, whereas in biomedical sciences you're looking at a bigger scale, and I think it loses some of the, for me, the reason that I chose it, I love kind of finding out why something happens. I'm really curious, like why, and I feel like those answers really get those questions really get answered in biochemistry.
I'm David. I'm a third year from Canada. Yeah, just to build off of that, I certainly agree that it's a lot more of a delve into the molecular, and on that sort of scale. I think biomedical science, you would be thinking of integrating that a lot more into physiology and anatomy, and if that's sort of your field, then there's some stuff on offer there for you. But within biochemistry, we really are looking at molecular explanations for things, whether that be from the plant side, bacterial side. But even if you are interested in the human side and you want to answer those questions at this molecular scale, this course really delves into all of the breadth that's required for doing that here. So.
That is certainly true. We get down to really the nifty biochemistry details of it, right? Don't we? Okay. The next question is, how did you decide on the college that you chose in your application? Harry?
Hi, my name's Harry, and I've just done my third year on this degree. I think when it comes to college choice, it really is very simple. It's just, where do you think you'd fit in and where do you think you'd be happiest? I wouldn't overthink it. I think you can look at who the tutors are, but it doesn't really matter that much. It's just really about where you think you'd be happy. All colleges are going to offer a really great experience, regardless of whether you end up.
I certainly agree with that. Seren, what about you? What made you choose?
Hi, my name's Seren and I'm a first year. So I applied to one college based on proximity to the department and the accommodation that it had. It provided accommodation for all 4 years of the degree, but I had an open offer and then ended up at a completely different college, which I'm then really happy at. So Harry's right, it really doesn't matter where you apply to, because you might end up somewhere completely different, but they're all great.
What about you, Yiquan?
Hi, I'm Yiquan and I'm a third year from Hong Kong. Yes. So I applied to my college after visiting it during one of the open days, and whilst it might be harder to sort of attend an open day in the current era, I think many colleges are trying to do something similar.
Yes, I think that's a very good suggestion. Just for getting an impression, certainly the colleges will try to be out there virtually for the prospective students.
Hi, I'm Dominika. I'm a first year from Poland. Yeah, so when I was choosing my college, I basically considered like distance to the department and the science area, like not as much to the center, but more to like where my lectures would be. Definitely size was a consideration. I didn't want like a small college with only like 50 people in a year group or something. I wanted like a bigger community. And yeah, I just looked like generally at the opinions online on like student forums and kind of read up on the atmosphere and stuff like that. But to be honest, like I was after interview, like for interviews, I was reallocated to a different college. And so like even though I didn't choose my college, it kind of ticked most of the boxes, and like I'm very happy at my current college, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I love it. So like do take into consideration like different things, but also don't really get too attached, especially at the beginning.
Thank you. That sounds very familiar. I've so far not heard from anybody that they didn't love their very college. The next question is, a lot is made about the Oxford tutorial system, or the TUTS as we call them. So what is a tutorial and how do you prepare for it? Can you give us a description of a tutorial from a student's perspective? Yes, Harry.
I think at its simplest, it's really just a kind of meeting between a small group of students, perhaps 3 or 4, it could even be less than that, with a group leader in the department, or it might be a member, or regardless of who exactly it is, it's going to be someone who's really at the cutting edge of whatever area the tutorial is going to be held on.
And in your first year, it's mostly, for biochemistry at least, it's mostly your college tutor. So you'll get to know them really well, and you'll do tutorials on all kinds of different topics. And how it's structured is usually you'll prepare a piece of work. So in our first year, that was often a problem sheet or an essay, and you'll spend a week, because we have one tutorial a week at my college, you'll spend that week kind of reading around it and trying to answer the question and write a piece of work, and then submit it to your tutor, usually the day before the tutorial. So when you come to the tutorial, they've marked your work and read your work, and you have a tutorial in groups of 2 or 3, and you can have a chat about kind of specifically what you 2 or you 3 did or didn't understand.
I would say definitely, as this conversation will be shown to prospective students, before I applied, my impression of a tutorial was very different to what they're like in real life. I thought it was kind of like an oral exam in some way, that it was like a test to really grill you on your knowledge of a topic that you might have written an essay on or something. And while kind of you might get asked questions that you're like, oh, do I know the answer to this? It's more of a discussion. It's a chance for you to ask questions and to further your understanding, rather than being tested on what you know. And if a tutor is grilling you in any way, it's only to help you understand better.
Thank you, Claire. Yi-Kwan, what's your experience?
I heard from when I was applying that it was sort of trying to become a leading authority in the field in a week. The emphasis is on try. And I think from my experience, it's been about reviewing a lot of the experimental evidence and sort of knowing why we know how we know. And sometimes we also carry out thought experiments to see if we can refute or gather support for certain hypotheses. And also, it's a really good chance to review recent findings, for example.
The most valuable thing about tutorials, especially in first year, was just being able to sit down with someone who's a complete expert in their field and just ask questions. And there's no question that's too stupid or too basic. I mean, I think one of my first year tutorials, I said in my essay that bacteria had a nucleus, and And my tutor looked at me and all the others kind of looked at me, but that's the great thing, is you're made to feel very comfortable about any mistakes that you make, and you're never going to be judged or put down, and you shouldn't be scared to speak out or ask questions, because that's what it's for, really. And I think as you progress through the years, so I'm a current third year, and in second and third years you kind of progress onto more specialist topics. So as you learn in lectures about more defined and smaller topics, you can actually travel to different colleges to have your tutorials with subject experts in that field, which can be quite scary at first, because you know your personal tutor and you know your tutor at your college, but meeting someone who is on the reading list for that week is quite scary. But again, it's a wonderful opportunity, because you can say, so I read this paper and you said that you had this result, but what would happen? Why didn't you choose to do that experiment? And you can directly ask these questions to the very people that wrote the paper. So I think it's just one of my favourite things, definitely, about Oxford.
Thank you. Actually, I certainly find it scary sometimes when a student in a tutorial points out, I read your paper, and why did you do it this way and not the other way around? And sometimes, it's very valid criticism. So, it can work the other way around as well. And it's always, very fruitful to talk with students about the things one works on, certainly. Next question. It is said that the transition from school to university is difficult. So how have you successfully managed this transition? Yes, Dominika, for you, the transition must be fairly recent. So
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, so before going to university, I took a gap year. So before starting Oxford, the last time I wrote an essay, it must have been 3 years ago, before starting my degree. So I really didn't know what I was doing, and I was just kind of confused for the first half of first term. But you just have to do it and make mistakes, learn from them. Everyone is just really understanding, and they know that it's a completely new environment.
Okay. Geek one?
I would say that it's nice to know the biochemist, but it's also nice to sort of get involved in more extracurricular activities, of which there is a huge abundance at Oxford. You can go for some of the sort of biochem related ones, such as biotech, civil technology, and you can also go for something completely distinct, such as national societies, sporting societies, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very useful advice. How was your experience, David?
Also coming from an international background, similarly, I think there was a lot of good community surrounding, coming to a new country, a lot of different people from different backgrounds coming in. So I did, feel very comfortable with the jump. I just wanted to, elaborate a little more on the academic side. I think all of the tutors know that each of the students come from a slightly different background. Not everybody did the same A-levels, and let alone there are many students who didn't do A-levels and did different, leaving qualifications. So, within the first few weeks, I'm sure that I had my fair share of, comments on my essays, which were pointing out some areas which needed work, and I hadn't developed in high school, which other students had. Having done the IB, I've had different strengths to those who have done the A-level biology chemistry route.
Alessandra?
I think in terms of adjusting, it's really about not expecting yourself to be perfect in the first couple of weeks. I think it's a massive jump to go from school and A-levels into an undergraduate degree, especially one that's quite intense like this course is. And you just have to accept, and everyone around you will expect that it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to be learning a lot, and it is a steep learning curve. But I think just make the most of it and don't pressure yourself too much. Just try and enjoy it, really.
Siren, what about you?
So I think making the most of Freshers Week is one of the best ways to sort of integrate yourself into university life. So most of that exists within your own college. So there are all sorts of events that are put on to help you meet as many people as possible. And it's also facilitated by the college family system, where you have sort of usually 2 people in the above, and usually one will have done is doing your subject and give you advice on what it's like. And you'll usually have some college siblings who might do different courses, and that's a good way to meet people within your college.
Thank you very much. I will move on to the next question, which is, have you taken up any extracurricular activities? And if so, which ones? So tell us a little bit about this and how it works alongside your studies. Alessandra.
Yeah, so in my first year, I went to Freshers' Fair and signed up for everything, as I think most people do when they get there, because there's so many exciting things. And, you know, it honestly feels like I could have joined any one of those and, you know, met a wonderful and passionate and group of people who really loved what they were doing. And I think it's so important to have a group of people who are doing something and who you have something in common with, who are outside of your college and also outside of your course, because it lets you meet so many new people. And, you know, I've been on so many kind of formal swaps and things and adventures with people from outside, and I also tried out a lot of new things. I just came to university and joined the athletics team because I did it in high school, and I really enjoyed that. There were so many, you know, really wonderful parts about that, and I got to run for the university in my first year, which was really exciting. But I also joined lots of things that I'd never tried before. I also do a lot of volunteering. There's a big volunteering scene in Oxford, so you can do a lot of work. There's a collective, and you can do all kinds of things, from tutoring younger children to helping out with the homeless action within Oxford. There's a massive range, and you can get involved. So I'm part of the group called It Happens Here, which is a campaign against sexual violence. So we do a lot of kind of policy work, and I've also found that to be really rewarding because it's a completely different thing. It doesn't require a set number of hours a week, which I think is so important, because you need to be flexible when you're doing a degree. You know, you might have weeks where you're really enjoying your essay topic and you fly through it in 2 days, and there might be weeks when, you know, you're finding it really hard and you're struggling and you've got lots of other things going on and you might not be able to dedicate as much time.
Thank you. You sound a very busy person, but it's certainly good to have a balance also, and not only have your nose in the books all the time. So what do you do, David?
I think it's really important, though, to get out and get involved with some activities. I do skiing with the university team, alpine skiing, which you might not think that you could do, but there's an indoor slope that we go to train at, and that's a lot of really good fun. At least I had considered myself more of an somebody who did academic work than somebody who did sports, and just getting involved, reaching out, and then having that community be so accepting was something that I only realized after doing it.
These extracurricular activities, they happen, they can be university-wide, or they might just be college-wide as well. So personally, I captain one of the university tennis teams, and it can be quite, sometimes quite tricky to balance everything, but there's a lot of support available, and it's very, very possible as long as you stay organized. And it's actually a really great opportunity to kind of become more independent, and yes, study a lot on biochemistry, and rightly so. That's why we're here. But it's also a great opportunity to look at other things and explore other areas of university.
As Alessandra said, like during Freshers Week, you just sign up to loads of stuff and then try out different things. And I did that, but like things didn't really work out, like the schedules weren't really working. So in my first term, I didn't really do many extracurricular things. And I thought, oh, okay, that's me done for the year then. There's some like things you just learn about not at the beginning. For example, I do art for some of the student magazines, and I didn't even know like that was a thing in the first term, and I've only learned about it in the second term, so I started doing it from then.
So when I was in my first and second year, I joined the college rowing club, and I really enjoyed this, but I'd never been sporty at all before uni, but I really enjoyed it because alongside all the sporting aspect of it, there were a lot of social events. So it was a really great way to get to know people in my college. So I rowed in first year and then coxed in my second year, which is when you yell at the people in the boat to row, for anyone who's not familiar. And I enjoyed that because it meant I could kind of diversify the experience that I had from rowing, and I really enjoyed learning to cox and learning that new skill. This year I joined Cheerleading Society, which was a complete pivot from rowing. But again, I really enjoyed it. I was very surprised by like how inclusive the society was, and it was just been great fun. So I could really recommend both of those.
Really exciting. Thanks. The next question is an interesting one. What have you found the most challenging, but perhaps also the most rewarding aspect of studying biochemistry at Oxford? Dominika?
Yeah, so I didn't really know or expect that the course would be that heavy on biophysics or like thermodynamics, stuff like that. So that was a bit challenging to me because I prefer more of the like cellular and molecular, like the more biological parts of biochemistry. But also like when I finally understood it and see how it kind of applies to the research and like how we use it within the techniques to kind of research those more biological parts. I really like understood that it's very beneficial to me just to like know this stuff because it's gonna help me like in the long term. So yeah, that was definitely the most challenging, the most surprising, but also very, very rewarding after I finally understood what's going on.
Well, I'm glad you came to that conclusion. Yes, David?
Yeah, I think sort of in the upper years, you find that the course becomes very broad in the sense that when I started in biochemistry, I didn't quite realize how ranging the scope could be. So I found that personally very challenging as somebody who's sort of, in more of a cellular and into genetics, but then having to work with the structural biology I found was also difficult. But at the same time, it's not something you can actually get away with not knowing, because all of these things are intertwined. So if every hour that I've invested into trying to understand these techniques for protein biochemistry and what have you, all come back because they're important to inform the cellular side. And then the cellular will also inform the structural.
Yeah, so I think it can be, biochemistry it's very technical. Just get there, you find things difficult, everyone struggles at different things just based upon what they knew before. But you get to know it, and then you then begin to understand it. And that's where I think it becomes really enjoyable to study once you actually understand the principles, and then you can see, oh, they apply here. I didn't think of it that way before.
Yeah, I would definitely say, building off what Harry said, that first year of understanding what the basic principles of biochemistry are is really important, and I think it's great that the department teaches it that way. I remember in one of our initial lectures, they had a slide that said, you think biochemistry is this, and it's a Venn diagram of biology and chemistry, but it's actually this Venn diagram of biology, chemistry, and physics. I was a bit intimidated by that, but really understanding those fundamentals does definitely help. And it's fine if you haven't done physics beforehand. They'll get you up to speed, no problem.
I agree with that. I didn't take physics in high school. The next question, which is a beautiful one. What about the subject inspires you most? Sharon?
I think what I enjoy most about biochemistry, as well as sort of understanding how things work, is how much we still don't know about different processes and how quickly evolving biochemistry is as a field, and how much potential there is for us to understand new things.
Certainly agree with that one. Yikwan?
I would say that biochemistry as a subject only really started to blossom 70 or 80 years ago. And if you look at how far we've come since then, and you look at how many non-medical Nobel Prizes have been awarded to biochemists, I think it shows that we biochemists have contributed a lot, but there is still a long way to go, as Sarah said.
Harry?
Yeah, just to kind of echo both of those points, the more we understand, the more we don't. It's kind of almost a paradox, and that's really great, because we shouldn't be afraid of not knowing things. It's actually quite motivating, and this is what I really do think will lead to several landmark discoveries and applications of biochemical research.
And as someone who's really into the applications of biochemistry for medical uses, I think that, like, within that realm, it's probably one of the most interesting fields with respect to medicine and medical innovation. I think where a lot of medicine is going is into things like personalized medicine, where we're sort of leveraging genomics to be able to inform, how we treat patients. And then also a lot of biotechnology advances, where we're developing new drugs, which aren't just, the conventional sense, but also in this biological sense, where we're using like engineered antibodies to help treat new diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many applications involved with basic biochemistry, and so much potential out there, right? It really is inspiring. So I agree perfectly with everything you said. Dominika, what inspires you most about biochemistry?
David, yes. Like, what inspires me about biochemistry is that it is ultimately like the study of life, and like the underlying principles of life. And so I was like, the way I arrived at I want to study biochemistry was because I got really interested in the origin of life and how life developed and kind of came to be. And that's like what biochemistry is at its core for me. It's just like the study of everything, like whether it be metabolism or genetics or like anything, like any of the processes that we study, it's all just pure life, pure chemistry that kind of makes life possible. And I think that's really beautiful in a way.
Yes, I hear you. And I agree very much with that as well. There are so many reasons why biochemistry is inspiring, certainly. So what's yours, Alessandra?
I think, one of my favorite things, and the things that I think now, I look back on most fondly over the past couple of years, is just seeing these things in action and seeing the kind of molecular machines in action. And there have been times, when we're all sitting in a lecture theatre and the lecturer turns the lights down and they show us this beautiful video of, a microscopy video maybe with GFP tagged elements, and you can just see it happening in front of you. And it's the most magical thing. It just genuinely feels like it's an animation, or someone's kind of drawn it up and it belongs in a movie. And then you think about it and you think, no, this is actually what's happening inside my very cells. And it's the fact that we've developed these techniques to be able to visualize it, and the fact that it's based on truly just chemicals interacting, like Dominika said. It's incredible. And I think it's a really magical moment, because not to sound too philosophical, but in a lot of those 9 a.m.s, we'll all be sitting there and you'll hear this like collective gasp, because everyone in there just really is in awe, and it's incredible and beautiful. And I think there's moments like that I'm just never going to forget.
That sounds really beautiful. I wish I were in that lecture. Okay, now we've already arrived at the last question, which is one for the third year students in particular. So how did you decide on your choices for your fourth year placements? Claire?
So the process the department kind of goes through definitely helps steer you and give you some structure in trying to decide which of these numerous labs you could go and possibly work in. When you're still in second year and at the start of third year, they host a series of talks where PIs and people from labs can come in and discuss what projects might entail and what their lab environment is like, and all of these things can help you decide. And then after that, you can arrange visits to the labs, where you get to go and have a look around, maybe speak to their current Part 2s, which I think is, which are 4th years, which I think is really important in helping you decide where to go.
David.
So one of the ways that that you can just find out what you might like is just by when they post these projects in your 3rd year, you go through them and see if any of them are sort of interesting. And that can be interesting not just from a conceptual point of view, where it's like, you know, I really like bacterial metabolism, or I really like genetics. It could be interesting from the fact that I really like doing these kinds of techniques, which you might learn from lab experiences that you've had up until that point.
Okay, Yi-Kwon, how did you decide?
I chatted to as many PIs as possible, and I think it's worth stressing that I am actually will be working on a project that was completely distinct from what I was initially expecting to. And it just really shows that as long as you look for all the opportunities out there, there are a lot of very exciting projects that don't necessarily fall in the remit of what you thought you were interested in.
I think that happens to a lot of students, certainly. Harry?
Yeah, so for me, we have several lectures, different areas of biochemistry, and naturally you'll have a greater zeal for some than others, and it just so happened that I was interested in kind of more structural techniques. And so then the next step is just to look around the department. It's also worth mentioning that although we are biochemists, and obviously the Department of Biochemistry would be the principal place to look, other labs and other departments across the university are still open to you working with them. For example, chemistry, or if you wanted to look more about immunology, you go to the Dunn School of Pathology, for example.
A lot of the people who propose a project would actually be very happy to meet you for half an hour and show you around the lab, and it gives you a chance not only to actually meet the supervisor and, you know, have a chat about kind of the day-to-day, as David said, and the techniques that you'll be using, but also, you know, kind of gauge their expectations. And it also gives you a really good opportunity to go into the lab and speak to some of the people who are working in the lab, maybe without the supervisor present, so they can give you the real kind of truthful, you know, this is what the day-to-day is, and this lab is really friendly, or this lab is a bit more hardworking, because there are, you know, and another thing that I just wanted to point out was that you can also kind of go outside that list. So it's not a prescribed, mandatory, you have to pick something on there. And if you think, you know, none of this speaks to me, and I don't really find any of this very interesting, but I know that, you know, I want to go into, for example, AI, and, you know, I think there'd be a really cool project to do with the computer science department on this. You can go in a completely different direction and meet with someone in that department. So you can go to any department in Oxford, or even internationally if you want to, although that's a bit trickier logistically, but you can kind of delve outside if you think that by the 4th year you'd rather do something completely different, or you have a really good idea. And that's another really interesting way, and it gives you a lot of freedom to decide what you want to do, and you're given quite a lot of responsibility, which I think is quite nice. And it's a really kind of daunting but also exciting task to come up with your own research project if you go that way. But either way, you have a lot of involvement, because you will be kind of directing, and though the project ideas give you a scope, you will have to kind of narrow that down, and you'll do that in consultation with the supervisor anyway.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the way, the 4th year is where you realize, or where you experience, what the real research is all about, what researchers do on a everyday basis, right? And yeah, I've seen students go off to France, do their 4th year projects there. Of course, it needs to be in the remit of the course, so you couldn't just go and do a purely, you know, completely off-topic project, but the freedom is quite large, indeed, if you take the initiative, and you can, and you're very welcome to. We hope this has answered some of the most burning questions that people have about how it is to study molecular and cellular biochemistry at the University of Oxford. And yeah, thank you guys very much for telling us about your thoughts, and thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.